2017's Wonder Woman was a really good superhero movie. It provided an appropriate sense of wonder, gave us a clever and funny fish out of water story, and simply worked on every level. Its follow up does some things right, but is also a bloated, messy, emotionally manipulative disaster. Yikes. Let's talk about it. Thank you so much for checking out the review. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel. You can also click that notification bell so you know whenever I post a new video. When I started working on this review, I figured I would be able to maneuver my way around the plot without spoiling things, but it became clear to me that in order to properly share my feelings on Wonder Woman 1984, I have to get into the details. I won't ruin the ending, but I have to talk about the movie's central premise, so take what you will from that. The movie starts off well enough with an awesome obstacle course competition flashback sequence from Diana's childhood. Hans Zimmer's incredible music takes center stage, combining the Amazonian theme from the previous film with an epic orchestral piece that is pierced by an all-female choir. It's legitimately some of the best music Zimmer has ever done and gives you the immediate sense that this is a sequel that might indeed surpass its predecessor. Jumping immediately forward to 1984, our heroine foils a black market heist in a shopping mall as part of an adventurous sequence that's worthy of the original Christopher Reeve Superman. So far, so good. Between these two initial set pieces, this is legitimately one of the best openings to any superhero movie I have ever seen. It's also, and I'm gonna go off on a bit of a rant here, it's also rock solid proof that certain movies must be seen in theaters. That massive Hans Zimmer opening musical number wasn't designed to be listened to on your earbuds. It was designed to be blasted from a thundering Dolby sound system in a theater packed with people. With Warner Brothers dumping the movie onto streaming platforms and into theaters at the same time, it certainly made it more convenient for audiences, but it's also completely sapped the life out of the experience. So now that we've gotten the great opening out of the way, let's talk about the film's plot. As of 1984, Diana Prince still has not gotten over the death of American fighter pilot Steve Trevor. Setting aside the fact that she fell in love with literally the very first man that she ever met, the fact that Diana has spent the last 7 decades being very sad is a little bit weird. Well, Chris Pine is back for the sequel, and while his return makes plenty of sense given the context of the overall story, that overall story is a huge, flaccid, wet turd. Introduced to us via the black market heist sequence in the beginning, the MacGuffin or central plot device that drives the entire story is what brings back Steve Trevor, it creates all of the stakes, it provides motivation for the villains. It's an ancient relic. Not a cool ancient relic like this, or this. This relic is essentially a monkey's paw, granting someone a wish, but also punishing them for trying to manipulate fate. This ends up affecting the world on a fairly massive scale, and that's basically the plot of the movie. There are 2 major problems with all of this. First, it provides the writers with the ability to use this absurd idea as an easy button to write their way out of any corner that they find themselves in. Second, it doesn't make any sense. You're going to create plot holes that are simply impossible to repair, and screenwriters Patty Jenkins, Jeff Johns, and Dave Callaham do exactly that. By expanding all of this wish granting to basically the entire planet, you're never going to, and pardon my illustration here, put the genie back in the bottle. I understand that movies require a certain suspension of disbelief. I enjoyed Transformers, and that movie is about talking space robots that turn into cars to protect the Earth from a bad robot asleep in the Hoover Dam. So I get it. Problem is that when you create this entire world and establish certain rules, you look really, really dumb when you immediately spend the rest of your movie breaking those very rules that are supposed to be the foundation of the plot of your film. As someone who remembers the dagger from Rise of Skywalker, I'm legitimately confused about how these ideas even made it past the brainstorming stage of development, let alone became the linchpin of the entire plot. The performances in the movie are all very good, despite the actors being forced to, run uphill against the script. Gal Gadot makes a great Diana Prince / Wonder Woman, and her continued involvement in the DC universe proves that she was one of their smartest casting choices. Chris Pine's Steve Trevor gets to be the fish out of water character this time around, essentially swapping places with Diana from the first movie. This is actually where the film does some decent work, bringing a nice touch of levity and humor. We also get a nice slight tweak on the flying scene from the 1978 Superman film. It's a clear nod to the relationship between Lois and Clark, even if that film did it better, obviously. And I'll be talking about this film's comparison to that movie a little bit later. While the first Wonder Woman had a handful of villains too, Wonder Woman 1984 has 2 villains, both of which are completely let down by the catastrophically bad story. Pedro Pascal gives an A+ effort as Max Lord, chewing up every single piece of scenery he can get his hands on, but his motivations and behavior are just all over the map. Jenkins has cited Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor as an inspiration for Max Lord, but when your villain turns out to be a complete moron, the comparison falls flat. Lord has far more in common with Luthor's bumbling sidekick Otis than he does with the big baddie himself. While I guess that Lord is like the big intellectual threat here, take what you will from that, Kristen Wiig's Barbara Minerva is supposed to be the physical threat. The biggest problem with this character is that she plays into one of the oldest and most consistently used villain tropes in cinema. That's the old jealous person that turns against the good guy routine. Aldrich Killian in Iron Man 3, Mysterio in Spider-Man Far From Home. The worst example of this is probably Eddie Brock's Venom in Spider-Man 3, and Barbara's transition into Cheetah copies that last example to perfection, and that's not a compliment. Those other movies simply made it more organic, and Wonder Woman 1984 shoves it directly in our faces. Director Patty Jenkins clearly has a lot of love for the source material, and she's a very talented filmmaker. She cited that 1978 Superman as the entire reason that she got into filmmaking, and Wonder Woman 1984 itself is an ode to the Richard Donner classic. It's got that massive, epic soundtrack and a tone and tenor that is meant to inspire hope and goodness. The problem is that it contains a story that's insulting to the audience on nearly every level. I adore that Superman movie so much that it was one of my earliest reviews. Link in the description. When I watch Christopher Reeve's Superman, I want to freaking run through a wall. When I watch Wonder Woman 1984, I want to run into a wall. I really wanted to enjoy this movie and was truly expecting to see something awesome. Apart from the music, action, and performances, it fails on nearly every single emotional and storytelling level. It's really quite simple. If you don't have a story, you don't have a movie. Wonder Woman 1984 is not a movie, it's a mess. In closing, I also want to make another quick note to Warner Brothers. If you're going to insult movie theaters and audiences by releasing movies theatrically and digitally at the same time, that's fine. But if you're going to then release your first big budget film in an effort to convince us all that you made the right decision, pick a better movie. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel. You can also like and share it since that tells YouTube it's worth promoting. Hit me up down in the comments. Let me know what you thought of Wonder Woman 1984. I'm legitimately curious about what people think of this movie, and I'll see you next Wednesday at 9 a.m.